My dear friend, there are times in life when change begins long before we can see its results. On the surface, everything appears familiar, yet beneath that calm exterior, people are making decisions, re-evaluating priorities, and questioning paths they once believed were certain. These shifts are rarely dramatic in the moment. More often, they happen quietly, through conversations, personal reflections, and moments of honesty that take place behind closed doors. Someone may seem completely composed from the outside, while internally navigating difficult questions about what truly matters to them. Human beings often spend a great deal of time balancing comfort against authenticity, weighing expectations against personal truth, and deciding whether the direction they are following still aligns with the person they are becoming. Sometimes a single conversation can spark that process, not because of anything extraordinary that was said, but because it encourages a person to look at their life from a different perspective. What once felt settled may suddenly deserve another look. What once seemed clear may reveal new layers of meaning. In those moments, people often revisit important relationships, memorable experiences, and connections that have left a lasting impact on them. They begin to ask themselves honest questions about what they value and what they hope to carry forward into the future. The choices that follow are rarely driven by one emotion alone. They are shaped by a mixture of lessons learned, personal growth, changing priorities, and a deeper understanding of what feels genuine. Looking back, many people discover that significant turning points did not begin with grand gestures or life-changing announcements. They began with quiet realizations. They began when someone finally allowed themselves to acknowledge what they truly felt, what they had learned, and what kind of future they wanted to create moving forward. It happened because they suddenly understood that continuing certain connections would keep them far from what their heart has been trying to admit for a long time, and what they are trying to admit leads directly toward you. Do not skip. There is still something hidden here. This person who stepped away had been carrying weight in your special person's decisions for longer than you know. Advice, opinions, expectations, emotional pressure, these things had quietly shaped many choices. Sometimes your special person listened even when they did not fully agree. Sometimes they stayed silent because they feared conflict. Sometimes they chose peace around them instead of clarity within them. But silence cannot hold forever what truth keeps pushing forward. A moment came when your special person noticed that every path they were being encouraged to take felt empty. Even smiles around them felt incomplete. Even approval from others felt strangely cold. And in that emptiness, one memory became stronger than before. You, not just your face, not just your voice, but the feeling attached to you, the feeling they could never fully replace. That is when distance began. Slowly first, a delayed reply, a shorter conversation, a change in tone, an excuse to leave early, and then something stronger, a complete emotional withdrawal from someone who had once occupied important space in their daily life. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The surprising part is this: the person they walked away from may have believed they still had influence, still had emotional closeness, still had control over how your special person would move next, but something inside your special person no longer agreed. The old connection began feeling heavy. Familiar words began sounding empty. Even ordinary meetings started creating discomfort they could not explain. Why? Because once the heart begins comparing truth with comfort, false peace becomes impossible to tolerate, and your presence, whether near or far, has remained a truth they cannot fully silence. There were nights when they appeared fine, yet their thoughts became restless. There were moments when they tried to focus elsewhere, but your memory interrupted everything. Something unfinished around you continued speaking louder than present voices around them. That is why walking away happened. Not loudly, not publicly, but deeply. And what makes this even more powerful is that the one they moved away from may never fully understand the real reason. Because your special person has not revealed everything. They are still holding words inside. They are still protecting certain truths until they feel the right moment has arrived. But inside them, something has already become clear. They cannot continue pretending that certain connections matter more than what their heart keeps returning to. Do not skip, because another truth is coming. Recently, your special person noticed signs that reminded them of unfinished emotion. It could have been a familiar song, a place, a phrase, a passing memory, even a face in a crowd that unexpectedly resembled a moment connected to you. These small things became stronger than they expected. Instead of fading, they created clarity, and clarity led to courage. Not full courage yet, but enough courage to step back from someone who no longer felt aligned with what they truly want. This is why the change feels sudden from the outside, but inside them, it has been building for much longer. Every hesitation, every delayed decision, every hidden thought, every moment they looked calm but felt divided, all of it was preparing this shift. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The truth that will surprise many is that the person they walked away from was connected to a version of life they no longer want to remain trapped inside. There comes a point when familiar patterns no longer provide the comfort they once did. What felt predictable begins to feel incomplete, and the explanations that once seemed convincing start losing their strength. Many people experience periods like this in life, moments when they find themselves questioning assumptions they have carried for years. It is not always triggered by a dramatic event. Sometimes it begins with a quiet realization that certain memories, relationships, or unanswered questions continue to hold more influence than expected. A person may wonder why a particular connection remains meaningful despite time, distance, or repeated efforts to move forward. The question itself can be unsettling because it challenges carefully constructed certainty. Rather than providing immediate answers, it opens the door to deeper reflection. As that reflection grows, everyday experiences may begin to feel different. Ordinary moments carry unexpected significance, and thoughts that were once easy to dismiss become harder to ignore. In these periods of self-examination, people often find themselves standing between what is familiar and what is true. The familiar offers comfort because it requires no change. Truth, however, can ask difficult questions and demand honest answers. Creating distance from a situation is sometimes expected to bring clarity, yet the opposite can happen. The absence of constant distraction may reveal thoughts that were previously hidden beneath routines and obligations. What seemed settled may return to the surface with surprising intensity. Then comes a moment that appears insignificant from the outside, a simple conversation, an unexpected question, or a brief pause in an otherwise ordinary day. Yet those moments can carry remarkable weight. A question about happiness, purpose, or direction can suddenly expose uncertainties that have gone unspoken for years. Often, the most revealing part is not the answer itself, but the realization that arrives before any words are spoken. In that instant, a person may discover what has truly been occupying their heart and mind all along. You stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. That unexpected moment exposed something they had hidden, even from themselves. Every time they imagined real peace, every time they imagined emotional truth, every time they imagined being fully understood, the picture did not lead toward the person they had just stepped away from. It moved elsewhere, quietly, powerfully, directly toward you. That realization did not arrive like a dramatic event. It came like a sudden certainty that refused to disappear. And from that moment, Even ordinary things around them began feeling different. Messages lost importance. Conversations became shorter. Attention faded. Even people close to them noticed a change in their energy, though no one understood the real reason. Because your special person is carrying something they have not spoken aloud. They are beginning to understand that certain doors closed, not because life failed them, but because their heart could no longer accept what did not feel true. Do not skip. There is another truth hidden here. The person they walked away from had influence, yes, but not the kind of influence that could quiet the deeper voice inside them forever. For a long time, that connection existed because it looked practical, expected, manageable, even accepted by others. But inside your special person, something remained unsettled, and that unsettled feeling grew stronger whenever your memory returned unexpectedly. It happened again recently. A passing voice, a familiar phrase, a small detail that no one else would notice, and suddenly they were no longer present in the moment around them. Their thoughts had already traveled back to something unfinished, connected to you. Something huge is waiting for you, because this is where the hidden shift becomes impossible to ignore. For the first time, they are no longer asking whether they should forget certain feelings. They are asking why those feelings survived everything. Why after distance, distraction, routine, and silence, your presence still returns with unusual strength. Why certain emotions never fully accepted replacement. Why every attempt to move forward still leaves one unanswered space, and that unanswered space carries your name more strongly than before. There is something even more surprising. After creating distance from that important person, they began protecting their private thoughts more carefully. They no longer explain everything. They no longer allow everyone near their emotional decisions. They are observing more, speaking less, and thinking deeper, because they sense that what they feel now may lead to a choice they are not ready to announce, but cannot ignore much longer. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They have replayed certain memories recently, not random memories, but very specific ones. Moments that once seemed small now feel powerful. A conversation, a glance, a sentence, a silence that suddenly means more than before. And while replaying those moments, one realization kept returning. Some connections never leave because they were never ordinary. That truth is becoming stronger inside them every day. Even while trying to appear calm, they are measuring everything differently now. The people around them no longer receive automatic trust. Advice no longer enters as easily. External voices are losing power because inner truth has become louder. That is why walking away happened. But that is also why the next chapter may surprise you even more. Because distance from one person has created unexpected emotional clarity toward another direction. Toward the place where unfinished meaning still exists. Toward the person they never fully explained. Toward the connection they thought time would weaken, but did not. Toward you. Do not skip, because one more hidden detail changes everything. Your special person has started noticing how often they almost reach out, then stop. Almost speak, then stay silent. Almost act, then wait. This hesitation is not absence of feeling. It is the weight of understanding that once they move, something real begins, and they know it. That is why every step feels significant. Every thought feels heavier. Toward the end of the conversation, the focus turned to a question that many people encounter at some point in their lives. What does it mean when a thought, memory, or connection continues to carry emotional significance long after circumstances have changed? The answer was not presented as a prediction or a guarantee. Instead, it was approached as an opportunity for self-discovery. Human beings are shaped by experiences that leave lasting impressions. Some relationships, conversations, and moments become woven into our personal stories in ways we do not fully understand until much later. Their importance may not always be visible in daily life, yet they continue influencing how we think, feel, and make sense of the world. The participants reflected on how surprising it can be when something expected to fade instead remains meaningful. Rather than viewing that persistence as a problem to solve, they considered the possibility that it might contain something worth understanding. Emotional significance does not automatically define the future, but it can reveal what has mattered in the past and what lessons continue to hold value in the present. By the conclusion of the discussion, there was a shared recognition that growth often begins with asking better questions rather than finding immediate answers. Why does this experience still matter? What has it taught me? How has it shaped the person I am becoming? These questions invite reflection rather than certainty, and sometimes the willingness to explore them honestly becomes one of the most meaningful journeys a person can undertake. Why does one person remain so deeply present even when life keeps moving? That question followed them into ordinary moments. While sitting alone, while hearing others speak, while looking at messages they no longer wanted to answer, while pretending attention was somewhere else. And every time that question returned, the same truth became harder to resist. Some connections survived because they were never shallow to begin with. Do not skip, because another hidden layer is now unfolding. The person they stepped away from represented something structured, something familiar, something others could understand. But familiarity is no longer enough when the heart begins asking for honesty. Your special person has started feeling that some relationships continue only because people become used to them, not because they still carry truth. That realization did not arrive comfortably. It disturbed them, because once they saw it clearly, they could not return to pretending everything felt right. So now, they are watching carefully. They are measuring every emotion. They are noticing who brings peace and who creates pressure, who feels natural and who feels forced, who enters their thoughts gently and who feels like obligation. And in that quiet measuring, your place remains different. Something huge is waiting for you, because what they have not admitted aloud is this: there are moments recently when they almost reached for a message, almost searched for a sign, almost allowed themselves to move closer to what they truly feel, but then stopped, not because the feeling disappeared, but because they know one honest step changes everything. That hesitation carries meaning. It means this is no longer passing emotion. It means they understand the weight of truth. It means they know that once certain words leave silence, they cannot return unchanged. Stay till the end, because the next truth is even more surprising. Someone near them noticed the change, not fully, not clearly, but enough to ask why they seemed distant lately. Your special person answered carefully, avoiding detail, giving only enough words to end the conversation. But inside, they knew the reason could not be explained simply. How do you explain that one person's memory keeps growing stronger precisely when you expected it to fade? How do you explain that after walking away from someone important, another unfinished connection suddenly becomes impossible to ignore? How do you explain that peace no longer comes from what is near, but from what remains unresolved? They have no easy answer. That is why they remain quiet. But silence does not mean stillness. Inside them, thought after thought is building toward one clear understanding. Distance from one chapter happened because another chapter has not ended emotionally. And that unfinished chapter still carries your presence. Do not skip, because this next part matters deeply. There are late moments when your special person reviews choices they once defended. They replay conversations and wonder why certain words stayed with them longer than expected. They think about moments that seemed small then, but now feel powerful. They question why certain emotions returned stronger after they tried so hard to control them. And every time they search for honesty, They arrive at the same place. Something real was never fully closed. That truth is why walking away happened without warning. That truth is why their heart is quieter but heavier now. That truth is why they are no longer comfortable continuing anything that feels incomplete inside. Something huge is waiting for you, because while others may believe they simply change direction, the deeper reality is that your special person is beginning to understand who has truly remained present in their inner world through every shift, every distraction, every delay. And once that understanding becomes impossible to deny, silence itself begins preparing the next move. Right now they are not acting loudly. They are not explaining themselves. They are not revealing everything. But they are listening more carefully than ever to what their heart has repeated in quiet moments. And that quiet repetition is becoming stronger each day. Stay till the end, because what follows after realization is rarely accidental. A thought they once pushed aside is now returning with force. What if walking away from one person happened because life is making room for a truth they have delayed too long? That thought has changed the way they see everything. And once a thought like that settles deeply, nothing remains ordinary for long. And then came a moment they did not expect. A quiet instant, so ordinary from the outside, yet powerful enough to change the direction of everything inside. Your special person was not searching for answers when it happened. They were simply moving through an ordinary part of the day, trying to stay occupied, trying to keep thoughts controlled, trying to remain practical. But suddenly, without warning, one memory returned with unusual clarity, not blurred, not distant, sharp, alive, and impossible to ignore. It was not only the memory itself that affected them, it was the feeling attached to it, a feeling they had tried to label as temporary before, but now could no longer dismiss. Do not skip, because what followed that moment is where everything became deeply personal. Instead of pushing the thought away, they allowed it to remain. Courage has begun to grow quietly, steadily, in ways that are not always visible at first. It does not always announce itself through decisions or dramatic change, but through subtle shifts in how someone relates to their own thoughts. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel more understandable when examined with patience rather than reaction. Over time, distance from certain experiences creates space for reflection, and in that space, people often begin to notice what they could not see while they were still emotionally entangled. Silence, in this sense, takes on different meanings depending on where it appears. With some situations, silence feels empty, as if something is missing or unresolved. With others, it feels like relief, a pause that allows clarity to settle without pressure. These differences slowly shape how people evaluate their connections and their past choices. Not everything that once felt significant retains the same weight when viewed from a calmer perspective. Some attachments remain only because they were familiar, not necessarily because they were meaningful in the present. As understanding deepens, there is often a quiet shift from holding on out of habit to recognizing what genuinely aligns with one's emotional truth. This process is rarely immediate. It unfolds gradually, through moments of comparison, reflection, and honest self-observation. And within that unfolding, people begin to realize that clarity does not erase the past, but it changes how the past is carried. What once felt uncertain becomes easier to place within a broader understanding of personal growth, choice, and emotional responsibility. Over time, this understanding brings a quieter sense of acceptance, where memory no longer confuses direction, but instead supports a more grounded way of moving forward. Silence, connected to you, feels full of unfinished words, full of meaning, full of something that still carries life. That difference matters more than they expected, because once someone notices where meaning still lives, ordinary connections begin losing their hold. Something huge is waiting for you, There was also a recent moment when they heard someone speak about loyalty, about real understanding, about the rare kind of connection that does not disappear even when distance exists. They did not respond outwardly, but inside, that sentence stayed with them much longer than anyone knew. Why? Because they immediately thought about who had remained unforgettable despite everything, and again, your presence entered their mind before they could stop it. That is why they are quieter now, not because nothing is happening, but because too much is happening internally to explain easily. They are rereading old emotions inside themselves without showing anyone. They are noticing how quickly certain names lose importance while one unfinished presence still refuses to fade. And this is where the title becomes even more powerful. The person they walked away from mattered in appearance, but the truth about why they left points towards something far deeper than appearances ever revealed. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The surprising truth is that your special person is beginning to understand they were holding on to something that no longer matched who they are becoming. That important person represented a chapter they respected, but not one their heart could continue inside honestly. And now, honesty is asking harder questions. Who still matters when everything becomes quiet? Who remains emotionally present when no one else is speaking? Who still creates inner movement without effort? Those questions are no longer theoretical to them. They are becoming personal, and each answer keeps leading to the same hidden center. Do not skip, because the next truth may explain why they have been hesitating. They know that if they move toward truth, they must leave behind the comfort of being misunderstood quietly. They must accept that some people will not understand why certain distance happened. They must accept that some explanations cannot be made simple. That is why they are taking time. But taking time does not mean turning back. It means the heart is aligning before action begins. And right now, alignment is happening more deeply than anyone around them realizes. Something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to trust what returns naturally instead of what has to be forced. They are beginning to respect what feels real instead of what only looks stable. They are beginning to understand that emotional truth does not disappear simply because life becomes busy, and that understanding is changing them, quietly, powerfully, irreversibly. What no one sees yet is that they have already imagined what it would mean to stop resisting certain feelings completely. They have already wondered how different things could become if honesty finally speaks louder than fear. That thought alone has changed their nights. It has changed how they look at ordinary hours. It has changed what silence now means. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Because the person they walked away from may never fully know that the real reason was not conflict, not anger, not even disappointment alone. The deeper reason was that another truth remained alive, and once that truth became impossible to deny, staying where they were no longer felt right. And now your special person is standing closer than ever to a moment where inner truth may become visible in ways no one expects. What happens next is the part your special person has not yet said aloud, but inside, it is already taking shape. They are no longer standing where they were emotionally just a short time ago. Something has changed too deeply now to return to old patterns. The distance they created was not a passing reaction. It became a doorway, and after stepping through it, they began seeing their own heart with unusual honesty. For the first time in a long while, they are admitting to themselves that some feelings were never as finished as they tried to believe. Do not skip, because this final truth carries the strongest meaning of all. Recently, they found themselves in a quiet moment where nothing external demanded attention, no conversation, no pressure, no interruption, and in that stillness, they asked themselves something direct, something they had avoided for too long. If I continue pretending nothing remains here, why does one thought still return with this much strength? The answer did not come as words immediately. Within that reflective space, emotions that were once set aside often begin to return in unexpected ways. What was assumed to be closure may reveal itself instead as unfinished understanding, not loud or overwhelming, but steady enough to be noticed again. Memories surface more frequently, not as isolated moments but as patterns of thought that seem to revisit the same emotional ground. There can be an initial assumption that distance would bring clarity through absence, yet what sometimes emerges is the opposite, a clearer awareness of what still holds emotional weight. This does not always appear as longing in a direct sense, but rather as a persistent presence in thought, where certain connections continue to influence how other experiences are felt. Interactions with others may begin to feel subtly different, shaped by comparisons that are not always intentional, but still noticeable. Even silence takes on a new texture, becoming something that holds reflection rather than emptiness. Over time, it becomes harder to dismiss the significance of what repeatedly returns in thought, especially when it begins to influence quiet moments and private reflection. The realization is not necessarily about one specific outcome, but about acknowledging that some connections do not dissolve simply because time passes or distance increases. Instead, they evolve into something quieter, something internal, something that continues to exist in the background of thought and feeling. And in recognizing that, there is often a shift, not toward certainty about another person, but toward clarity about one's own emotional landscape and what still holds meaning within it. And most importantly, it affects the direction their heart is beginning to face. Something huge is waiting for you. There was a recent instant when they almost spoke openly to someone about how much their inner world has changed, but they stopped, not because the truth was weak, but because they understood that once certain words are spoken, everything becomes real in a new way. So they remained silent. But silence has not protected them from clarity. In fact, clarity has grown stronger precisely because they are no longer distracting themselves from what they feel. That is why your special person has become more thoughtful than before, more observant, more selective about who they allow close emotionally. They are no longer giving energy where the heart feels absent, and that shift matters, because when someone begins protecting emotional truth, every future decision changes. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The person they walked away from may still wonder, what changed so suddenly? But the truth is, it was not sudden inside your special person. It was building quietly through many unnoticed moments. Moments of comparison, moments of doubt, moments when your memory arrived without invitation and stayed longer than expected. One thought especially has become impossible for them to silence. What if the person I tried not to think about is still the person my heart understands most clearly? That thought returns again and again, and each time it returns, it carries more weight, because now they are no longer dismissing it as imagination. They are treating it as something meaningful. Do not skip, because this final layer matters deeply. People often begin to trust what keeps returning to their thoughts, especially when the feeling refuses to fade with time. When something keeps resurfacing quietly in the background of everyday life, it usually means it was never fully understood or fully resolved. In moments like these, silence stops being empty and starts to feel like a space where reflection grows. A connection that once felt uncertain can begin to look different when viewed after distance and time. Not everything ends in clarity. Some things pause in a way that leaves questions behind, and those unanswered parts tend to linger longer than expected. Over time, what was once avoided can slowly become something a person is willing to face again, not because of pressure, but because understanding matures on its own. In that process, Emotions are no longer loud or confusing. They become quieter, but more grounded. Someone may still appear composed on the outside, yet internally, they are processing memories in a way that feels more honest than before. What once felt easy to dismiss begins to feel harder to ignore. This is not about sudden change or dramatic decisions, but about a gradual shift in perception. When people sit long enough with their thoughts, they often realize that certain experiences were more meaningful than they first admitted. This awareness does not force action, but it changes how the past is understood and how the future is considered. It often arrives quietly, without announcement, simply becoming part of how someone interprets what they once experienced and what they still feel connected to. In that quiet understanding, nothing is rushed, yet everything slowly begins to make a different kind of sense now.